Please, I'm so sorry.
She called me a gold digger in front of everyone. Then she ripped my dress, poured water over me, and laughed while the guests watched. I wanted to disappear until my husband walked in. The man everyone feared, her own son, came to reveal who I really was. If you've ever been judged for your looks or your status, watch till the end. Because sometimes, karma doesn't come quietly. It comes dressed in truth. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story if you believe real worth can't be hidden by appearance. I still remember the day he slipped that ring on my finger, quietly, almost trembling, like we were doing something forbidden. There was no audience, no bouquet of roses, no flashing cameras. Just us, standing in the small garden behind his penthouse, with the city lights flickering below and the night wind whispering promises we were too scared to say aloud. He held my hands and said, "Sophia, I don't want the world to know yet. Not because I'm ashamed, but because my world doesn't understand love without labels." I believed him. I always did. He was the kind of man who could silence a boardroom with a look but melt when I laughed. To me, he wasn't the billionaire everyone feared. He was just the man who brought me coffee at 2 a.m., who listened when I talked about my mother's old recipes, who believed that simplicity wasn't weakness. But love, real love, has a way of testing you in silence before anyone else does in public. For months, we lived between two worlds. When we were together, he was my husband, my best friend, my everything. But outside, I was nobody. I couldn't wear the ring in public. I couldn't walk beside him at galas. And when the press called him the most eligible bachelor in the city, I smiled from the shadows and told myself that someday they'd know the truth. Then one evening he came home with an invitation in his hand, a shimmering gold card embossed with his family crest. "It's my mother's annual charity gala," he said, his voice tight. "She wants to meet you, but she doesn't know who you are yet." My heart skipped a beat. I knew about his mother, elegant, powerful, and impossibly proud. People called her the queen of society. Every photo of her radiated confidence and command. And me? I was just a simple woman who still ironed her own clothes and forgot to wear perfume most days. He tried to reassure me. "Don't worry, you'll be fine. I'll be there soon. I just have a quick meeting before the event." He kissed my forehead and smiled. But there was something behind that smile, a shadow of worry he couldn't hide. I stood in front of my mirror for hours that night, trying to decide what to wear. Every dress I owned felt too plain, too quiet for that world. In the end, I chose the soft beige one, the one he said made me look peaceful. I didn't have diamonds or designer heels, but I had sincerity, and I thought that would be enough. The next evening, as the driver opened the car door outside the grand estate, I could already hear laughter echoing from inside, the kind of laughter that smells like champagne and money. My palms were damp. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "You belong here, not because of your dress, but because of your heart." I walked through those golden doors like I was stepping into another universe. Crystal chandeliers glowed above me, the air filled with expensive perfume and polite laughter. Everywhere I looked, people shimmered, silk gowns, diamonds, champagne glasses raised mid-conversation. And then I saw her, his mother. She stood near the center of the room, surrounded by guests, radiant in her silver gown. When her eyes met mine, she smiled politely at first, then frowned, as if trying to place me. I could see the curiosity flicker behind her perfectly painted eyes. I wanted to walk up to her and introduce myself, but something stopped me. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the weight of the secret between us, the truth she wasn't ready to hear and I wasn't ready to say. As I stood there, a soft unease crept over me. The music swelled, glasses clinked, and people mingled around me, but my heart beat too loud to hear anything else. I didn't know it then, but that night, the truth I'd been hiding would explode in front of the entire room. And when it did, it would change everything. The first few minutes inside that ballroom felt like walking through a dream I didn't belong in. Everyone shimmered, jewels, satin, and confidence wrapped in champagne laughter. I tried to blend in quietly, holding my small clutch like a shield, smiling politely whenever someone's eyes lingered too long. Every detail of that place screamed wealth: the marble floor, the golden archways, the way waiters glided instead of walked. I stood near the edge of the crowd, hoping my husband would arrive soon, but instead I heard her voice, calm, cold, and commanding. His mother. She was greeting her guests with a charm so perfect it felt rehearsed. When her gaze finally found me, something in her expression changed. The polite smile faded into curiosity, then into a sharp, judgmental stare. She walked toward me slowly, like a queen inspecting an intruder. "And who are you, dear?" she asked, her voice dripping with the kind of sweetness that hides poison. I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could, another woman beside her chuckled and said, "Oh, she must be one of the new helpers. Look at that dress." My face burned. "I'm a guest," I said quietly, trying to hold my ground. Her eyes narrowed. "A guest?" she repeated, her voice rising just enough for nearby people to hear. "Whose guest?" Before I could respond, she looked me up and down, from my soft beige dress to my simple sandals, and smiled with mock pity. "Darling, this is a charity gala, not a market. Women like you come here hoping to find rich men to save them. Let me save you some time. My son doesn't date charity cases." The words cut through the air like glass. The people nearby started whispering, some pretending not to listen, others smirking behind their glasses. I tried to stay calm. "I didn't come here for anyone's money," I said softly. She laughed. "Of course not," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "You're different, right? Every gold digger says the same thing before she gets her claws in." Laughter erupted around us, polite, cruel laughter. I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I took a step back, wishing the floor would open up and swallow me. Her friends circled closer, whispering things I couldn't fully hear. Words like cheap, pretender, attention seeker. One of them even brushed past me and muttered, "Poor thing probably borrowed that dress." I wanted to leave, to disappear, but before I could move, she blocked my path. "Wait," she said, a wicked spark in her eyes. "If you're not here for attention, you won't mind a little test." A waiter walked by carrying champagne, and she plucked a glass from the tray, swirling it lazily. "You say you don't care for luxury?" she said. "Then you won't mind wearing humility." Before I could understand what she meant, she tilted the glass, spilling the cold, golden liquid straight onto my dress. The room gasped. My heart froze. The liquid soaked through the thin fabric, clinging to me. I heard laughter, loud, cruel, endless. I looked up at her, hoping she'd stop, but she only smirked. "Oh, my dear, you should be more careful. Accidents happen to people who don't belong." I turned to leave, but her hand caught my arm. No, we're not done," she said, calling her friends closer. "You all see? This is what happens when the lower class tries to walk among lions." I pulled my arm free, my voice trembling but steady. "You don't know who I am," I said. She laughed again, cruel and sharp. "I don't need to." I can smell desperation, and that was the moment I realized she wasn't just trying to embarrass me, she was trying to break me. The crowd was watching, whispering, recording with their phones, feeding on the drama. I looked around for my husband, for anyone familiar, but he wasn't there. He was supposed to have arrived by now, and as I stood there drenched, shaking, surrounded by laughter, one thought kept echoing in my mind. He promised he'd protect me. Where is he? Little did I know, the night was far from over. The humiliation had only just begun. I thought the champagne was the worst of it, that nothing could hurt more than the laughter echoing around me. But I was wrong. That was only the beginning. As I tried to compose myself, the mother-in-law's friends circled closer, their perfume thick in the air, their smiles sharp as knives. One of them leaned in and whispered loudly enough for others to hear, "Maybe she came here to clean the floor. Look how well she's already dressed for the part." Another burst into laughter, covering her mouth with a diamond-covered hand. I tried to step away, but the mother-in-law's voice cut through the noise. "Wait," she said, eyes glinting. "If you're so confident, then tell me, who invited you?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Your son," I said softly. Her face stiffened for a second, but she quickly recovered, the smirk returning. "My son?" she repeated, almost laughing. "Oh, sweetheart, you must be confused. My son doesn't mix with your kind. He's too smart for charity projects." A ripple of laughter spread again. I felt every giggle like a slap. Before I could say another word, one of her friends, a tall woman in a red gown, reached forward and tugged at the sleeve of my dress. "This fabric feels cheap," she said, sneering. "You probably bought it from a street market." "Please," I whispered, stepping back, "don't—" But it was too late. The mother-in-law grabbed the other side, and with a sudden jerk, the delicate seam tore down my arm. The sound of ripping cloth echoed louder than the music. My heart dropped. I froze, staring down at the torn fabric hanging loosely, disbelief turning into horror. The women gasped dramatically, pretending to be shocked. "Oh dear," one of them said mockingly. "I think we just helped her new look." Another chuckled. She needed it. She looked too modest anyway. I tried to cover myself with my arms, trembling, my breath quick and shallow. The mother-in-law turned to a nearby waiter and said coldly, "Bring me a bucket of water." The waiter hesitated, eyes flicking between us. "Ma'am?" "You heard me," she snapped. "If she wants to attend my event pretending to be someone she's not, maybe she should cool down first." I felt my stomach twist. "Please," I said, my voice cracking, "don't do this. I didn't mean to offend you, but her smile only grew. Offend me? Oh no, dear, you amused me. There's a difference." When the waiter returned with a silver bucket filled with water, the whole room seemed to hold its breath. I stepped back, shaking my head. "Don't," I whispered again, but my voice was lost in the sea of murmurs and giggles. Then, without a blink of hesitation, she lifted the bucket and poured it over me. The icy water hit my skin like 1,000 needles. I gasped as it drenched me from head to toe, soaking through the torn dress, clinging to every curve and shiver. The sound of liquid splashing against marble filled the room, followed by laughter, cruel, roaring laughter that bounced off the golden walls. Cameras flashed, phones recorded. Some guests turned away uncomfortably, but most kept watching, entertained. I stood frozen, my hair dripping, mascara running down my cheeks, my heart breaking in slow motion. The mother-in-law tilted her head, satisfied. "Now you look exactly how you should," she said, her voice smooth and poisonous. I wanted to scream, to run, to disappear, but my legs refused to move. Tears finally spilled down my face, mixing with the water already soaking my skin. I turned and stumbled toward the exit, ignoring the whispers, the laughter, the pitying stares. Outside, the cold night air hit me like a slap. I stood under the porch, shivering, my breath coming in shaky bursts. My hands clutched the fabric of my ruined dress, and I whispered to myself, "This can't be real. He'll come." He promised. The driver looked at me in shock, reaching for a towel, but I shook my head. "No," I said quietly. "He needs to see this. He needs to know what they did." And so I stood there, wet, broken, and humiliated, waiting, because deep down, even through the pain, I felt something burning inside me. Not anger, not hatred, just a quiet strength, the kind that rises after everything else has been stripped away. I didn't know it yet, but that same strength would soon silence everyone who had laughed at me, and when he walked through those doors, everything would change. The laughter inside still echoed faintly as I stood outside, trembling, drenched, and humiliated beyond words. I could hear the music continuing, glasses clinking, people pretending that nothing had happened, that my pain was just another piece of gossip to be whispered about later. My heart felt heavy, but my tears had stopped. I didn't have any left. I just stood there, breathing slowly, holding on to the last shred of dignity I could find. And then I heard the familiar sound of an engine, deep, smooth, powerful, the kind of car you could recognize even in a storm. A black luxury sedan pulled up near the entrance. My pulse quickened. The driver stepped out and opened the door. And there he was, my husband. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored silver suit, his hair slightly tousled, his expression calm, until his eyes met mine. For a moment the entire world went still. He froze, seeing me soaked, trembling. Mascara streaked down my cheeks, the sleeve of my dress torn. His jaw tightened. That calmness vanished instantly, replaced by something darker, fury and heartbreak tangled together. He didn't ask a single question. He didn't need to. His eyes spoke everything. He walked straight toward me, removing his jacket without hesitation, and placed it gently around my shoulders. The warmth of the fabric made me want to cry again, but I held it in. His voice was low, controlled, but I could hear the storm beneath it. "Who did this?" I shook my head weakly. "Please, let's just go." He didn't move. His hand clenched slightly before he took a deep breath, his tone changing. Calm but lethal. "No. Not yet." He turned and began walking back inside, his arm around me protectively. The moment we stepped through the ballroom doors, the entire room seemed to freeze. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The music faltered. Every eye turned toward us, toward the woman drenched in water, and the man who looked like he could burn the room down with a glance. His mother's face went pale. She tried to smile, her voice faltering. "Oh, darling, there you are. We were just—" He cut her off, his voice firm and echoing across the hall. "Enough." The single word silenced the room. He looked around at the guests, his arms still around me. "Does everyone here find this entertaining?" he asked coldly. "Humiliating a woman until she breaks?" His mother opened her mouth to speak, but he raised a hand. "Don't. Please don't. Not tonight." Then, in a calm voice that shook every person in that ballroom, he said, "You all want to know who she is? Fine. Let me introduce her properly." He turned toward me, his gaze softening for a moment. "This is my wife." Gasps rippled through the room like a wave. Glasses dropped. Someone audibly whispered, "His wife?" The mother-in-law froze completely, her painted smile collapsing. "What? What did you just say?" He took a step closer to her. "You heard me. The woman you poured water on, the one you called a gold digger, the one you mocked in front of your friends, is my legally wedded wife." Her lips trembled. "You married her? Without telling me?" "Yes," he said sharply, "because I knew what you'd do if you found out. I knew you'd judge her by her dress, not her heart." A tense silence filled the room. The guests avoided eye contact, suddenly remembering their laughter. Some lowered their glasses, embarrassed. He continued, voice steady but full of disappointment. "This party was supposed to be about compassion, your annual charity gala, remember? Yet the only charity missing here tonight was kindness." The mother-in-law's face turned pale as whispers spread through the crowd. Reporters and photographers at the back began snapping pictures. Her friends slowly backed away, pretending they hadn't laughed moments ago. My husband looked at me, his eyes soft again, his voice quiet enough for only me to hear. "I'm sorry, Sophia. I should have been here sooner." I shook my head, my voice trembling but strong. "No. You're here now. That's what matters." He took my hand and faced everyone one last time. "If anyone here ever doubts her again," he said clearly, "they'll answer to me." And in that moment, standing beside him, wrapped in his jacket, water still dripping from my hair, I felt something shift. The humiliation that had crushed me minutes ago began to fade, replaced by something new. Power. Peace. For the first time that night, it wasn't me who felt small. It was everyone who had laughed, and as his mother stood frozen, speechless and pale, I realized the truth had just rewritten the entire night. The silence that followed his words was heavier than any noise I'd ever heard. Every face in that glittering ballroom looked different now. The same guests who had mocked me moments ago stood frozen, their smiles gone, their champagne glasses trembling in their hands. The laughter that had filled the room earlier seemed like an echo from another lifetime. I stood beside him, his jacket still wrapped around me, feeling both exposed and protected. My heart pounded in my chest, but for the first time that night, it wasn't from fear. It was from the power of truth finally stepping into the light. His mother tried to speak, her voice shaking. You married her? Without even telling your own family? He turned toward her, calm but unflinching. Yes, he said, his tone cutting through the air, because I knew you'd never accept her. You'd look at her dress, her background, and decide she wasn't good enough, but what you never cared to see is her heart. And that's worth more than all this gold combined. The crowd murmured. Someone whispered my name. Cameras flashed again, the sound of shutters slicing through the tension. I wanted to disappear, but I forced myself to stand still. I didn't want to hide anymore. His mother's voice grew smaller. You humiliated me in front of everyone, she said, clutching her pearl necklace. He took a step closer. No, Mother. You humiliated yourself. You drenched a woman in water because she didn't wear your version of elegance. You laughed at her pain in a room full of strangers. What does that say about the values you built this empire on? She looked away, her confidence faltering. I saw something flicker in her eyes, guilt, maybe even shame, but it was buried under layers of pride. He turned to the guests, his voice rising again. This gala was supposed to raise money for women's shelters, for those who've been mistreated, looked down on, or left powerless, yet here you all are, laughing at the very kind of woman you claim to help. Is this what charity means to you? A performance for your egos? No one spoke. A few lowered their heads. The music had stopped entirely. The only sound left was the quiet hum of embarrassment. He looked back at me and took my hand gently. Let's go, Sophia. But before we could leave, his mother called out, her voice breaking slightly. Wait. Everyone turned. She took a hesitant step forward. I didn't know, she stammered. I thought she was just... She stopped herself, realizing the ugliness of what she was about to say. I met her eyes, calm but firm. You thought I was beneath you, I said softly. And maybe that's the problem. You judge people by what they wear, not what they carry inside. The words seemed to hang in the air like truth finally freed. She lowered her head, her pride slipping through her fingers like sand. I'm sorry, she whispered. The sound was barely audible, but everyone heard it. My husband nodded once, expression unreadable. Apologies don't erase pain, he said quietly, but they can be a start. He guided me toward the exit. The crowd slowly parted, making way for us. For the first time, they weren't laughing. They were silent, the kind of silence that comes when people see their own reflection and don't like what they find. As we walked out, flashes from the reporters' cameras followed us like falling stars. I held my head high, even though my dress was torn, my makeup ruined, and my body still trembling. Because in that moment, I realized, dignity doesn't need diamonds, it only needs truth. Outside, the cool night air touched my skin, washing away the last traces of shame. I looked at him and smiled faintly. I told you your world wouldn't accept me, I whispered. He shook his head and squeezed my hand. They will now. Because you made them see what real worth looks like. And as we stepped into the car, I glanced back at the glowing mansion, the place that had broken and rebuilt me in a single night. The whispers, the laughter, the humiliation. None of it mattered anymore, because I hadn't lost my voice. I'd found it. Inside that golden hall, they had poured water over me to disgrace me. But what they didn't realize was, they washed away their illusions instead. And when the car pulled away, I left not as the poor girl they mocked, but as the woman who taught them the cost of cruelty. A week passed, but the echoes of that night didn't fade. The story spread like wildfire, not just among society's elite, but across every headline and screen. Philanthropist insults her own daughter-in-law at charity gala. The headline burned through the news like a lesson the world hadn't seen coming. Everywhere I went, people recognized my face from the leaked videos, the drenched dress, the trembling voice, the moment he wrapped his jacket around me. I should have felt humiliated again, but I didn't. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, not for how I looked, but for how I stood my ground. Our home was peaceful during those days. He refused to attend interviews, declined every public statement. "Let them talk," he told me one morning, sliding a cup of coffee toward me. "The truth doesn't need our defense. It speaks for itself." His calm steadiness was my anchor, but deep down, I knew there was one conversation that hadn't happened yet, one wound still open. It came sooner than expected. Late one afternoon, a soft knock echoed through our front door. I opened it, and there she was, his mother. Gone was the proud, glittering woman from the gala. The diamonds were gone. Her hair was tied back simply, her makeup faint. For the first time, she looked human, vulnerable even. She hesitated at the doorway, holding her clutch tightly like it was a piece of armor she no longer knew how to use. "Sophia," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "May I come in?" I nodded and stepped aside. She walked in slowly, her eyes scanning the living room, perhaps realizing how different our home was from the marble halls she lived in. There were no grand chandeliers here, just books, soft light, and peace. She turned to me, her eyes moist. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she began, "but I need to say this. I was wrong. About you. About everything I stayed silent, letting her speak. I was so afraid of losing control over my son's life that I forgot what control even costs," she continued. "I thought money protected us. I thought power defined us. But that night, I saw what it really made me. Cruel." Her voice cracked on the last word. She took a shaky breath, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. "I can't erase what I did, but I can promise you this. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure no woman ever feels the way I made you feel." Her sincerity disarmed me. I felt a lump form in my throat, the memory of that freezing water flashing through my mind, the laughter, the shame, the humiliation. I could have held on to the pain. I could have let it harden me. But instead, I stepped closer and said softly, "Sometimes, life breaks our pride so it can rebuild our hearts." She nodded, covering her mouth as tears fell freely. And in that quiet moment, without an audience, without cameras, without judgment, forgiveness happened. Not because she deserved it, but because I needed it to move forward. After she left, I stood by the window, watching the sunlight spill over the garden. I realized something profound. Dignity isn't loud. It doesn't demand revenge or validation. It just stands quietly, shining through the cracks of pain until the world has no choice but to notice. A few months later, I was invited to speak at a women's charity event, the same organization her gala had supported. I stood on that stage, looking at a room full of women who had been laughed at, overlooked, underestimated. My voice was calm, but steady. "They poured water over me to humiliate me," I said, "but it didn't wash away my worth. It only revealed it. And maybe that's what pain does. It doesn't destroy you. It defines you." The room fell silent. Then came the applause, soft at first, then stronger, until it filled the hall like a wave of healing. As I stepped off the stage, I saw her, my mother-in-law, standing near the back, clapping with tears in her eyes. This time, her pride wasn't in the way. That night, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the woman who had been humiliated anymore. I saw the woman who had turned humiliation into grace. Because in the end, the story wasn't about revenge. It was about revelation. It was about the truth that no amount of luxury, gossip, or cruelty can hide forever. And as the screen fades to black, my voice lingers one last time. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Sometimes the softest hearts carry the loudest lessons.